These are the top 10 games that I will probably never play again. What are my favorite games that I'm not going to bring back to the table? Well, we'll find out. I'm Chris Steele, and this is Tabletop Game Talk, a show where we talk about tabletop games of all kinds. Today, we're doing a Tuesday Top 10. This is my first Tuesday Top 10. I'm calling it Tuesday Top 10 today. We'll see if that name sticks. This is going to be the first in a series of 4 top 10s I do. I'm going to do these weekly. And this is essentially a top 10 to give you an idea of the type of games I was interested in and maybe now why I'm not interested in them as much, as well as the next 3 will be my favorite games, my favorite 2-player games, my favorite gateway games, those type of things. Just to give you kind of a feel, a benchmark for, is my taste similar to your taste? And if it is, great. If it's not, then the games I recommend are not the ones you should be playing. So let's jump into this right away, right? We're going to talk about number 10 first, because that's what you do with top 10. So you just start from the bottom and go on up. And my first top 10, and I already have a tie. I'm already going to do 11 games. But these 2 games share enough in common that I couldn't cut one of them and not mention the other. So both of these games I played a ton of when I first got into the hobby. And, well, let's just look at what they are. Lords of Waterdeep and Catan. These were games that are kind of like quintessential games that we played, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, right? I don't think Lords of Waterdeep is a full decade old, but it's old enough to be in the past. But it's still good enough today that I would play it if I wasn't completely burnt out on it. Catan, not the greatest game in the world. At the time, I liked it. But even then, at the time, I didn't like playing it in person as much because it took forever. But that's the reason that both of these games are on this list, is because they both came out with app versions that were fantastic. And I played the app versions to death. I must have played 100 games of each of these in app form. So now, whenever someone recommends, hey, you want to do this? I'm like, anything else would be fine, because I've played these games too much, and I played them in their fastest form. So now, if they hit the table, they're just going to be super slow, and I get impatient, and it's just not as much fun. So this is a situation where the app, it didn't kill the base game for me. It just allowed me to experience the base game to its, logical conclusion. Eventually, you just stop playing games. Oh yeah, I have pictures of all these games being played too. So with credits from the BGG users if I took the images from there. But number 9. So if number 10 was cheating because I put 2 games on it, number 9 is basically going to make me lose a lot of gamer cred. But this is an important game. This is an important game in our hobby. This is an important game to me and in my childhood. I feel like I'm apologizing for it, but I don't think I should be apologizing for it. Number 9, greatest game that I'll never play a game that I'll never play again, is Monopoly. Yes, I know Monopoly is not a good game. I know that you wouldn't put this on a greatest game list if you're looking at games and trying to say this is a good design or this is, well, basically just a good design. But the fact of the matter is this game's been around for almost 100 years. It has sold more than any other game in the history of the world. It has introduced more people to board games in general than any other game ever could. This game rightfully deserves being called great, even if the rules of the game and the play of the game are not great. And admittedly, most of us play this game wrong, and when you play it right, it does solve a lot of problems that we have problems with, like the length of it. And, well, player elimination doesn't happen. It's not as big an issue when you aren't constantly trying to stretch the game out by, free parking and negotiating when you're not supposed to and not buying properties and not using the auction rule. Rodney Smith did a great, I think it was an April Fool's episode of How to Play Monopoly, where he teaches it right. And if you play it that way, it's not as bad. I will never play Monopoly again. Probably. I have 2 small kids, and they'll probably be exposed to this someplace, somewhere. They're going to have friends and they're going to find out that their dad plays board games. It's like, oh, come over to my house. We have Monopoly. And they're going to play Monopoly and they're going to come back and be like, hey, want to play Monopoly? And I'm going to say, no, let's play this other game instead. But I want them to play it. Everyone should know what this game is because of its meaning in our culture and our society. So that's our number 10. Just here's a classic thing. Why is this important to me? 9-year-old Chris, for an entire summer, played Monopoly every single day with a friend of mine who was 12. There was a friend of my mom's, her son, and we just played this game every day. Every single day we played this game. And I lost pretty much every single time. But I remember at the end of every game trying to strategize of what I was going to do next so I could win the next game. And this created, I don't know, like a love of competition because I lost all the time. So it wasn't like you got an urge for winning or anything. Maybe that's why I don't care to win. I don't care if I win. I played this and I just truly enjoyed the experience of playing this game. And, since that summer, I haven't played it, but that summer, that was a very important part of my gaming experience. So, number 9, Monopoly. Number 8, now we're getting into mainstream games. Most of the games on my list, you can still buy and play today. This particular game, you can buy today, but it's out of print, so it's very expensive to buy. That's not the reason it's not, that's not the reason it's on my list. I actually own this game, but I don't think I am going to play this game again, even though I've had some of the greatest experiences while playing this game, and that is Battlestar Galactica, the board game. There's 2 reasons for this. The first one is FFG just announced Unfathomable, which is the re-skinning of this game, and there's some changes to it. So I might try Unfathomable, which I don't know if that's cheating that I wouldn't play this again, but I might try it. But the main reason that I don't see myself playing Battlestar Galactica again is the game is very long. It can create really interesting experiences because of its length, but also it's 3 to 5 hours of constantly suspecting the people you're playing with, your friends, that they're bad, or they thinking you're bad, or you being bad and having to lie to them. All of that is a lot of fun. It's just I've done this enough where I'm just like, okay, I'm tired of that situation, of that feeling. And it can lead to very bad situations if at the beginning of the game, someone is quickly found out to be a Cylon, and therefore during the entire rest of the game, nobody wants to talk to you or deal with you or do anything like that. And it is a game that can ruin friendships. So I've come pretty close to that, and I don't want to cross that line. So Battlestar Galactica, we're just going to tuck it away. It's fine. But while I was playing it, it was fantastic. Like, I really, really love this game. There's so much going on. There's so much intrigue. There's so much story. This is one of the most thematic games that you'll ever play, as far as how well the IP integrates in with the game itself and the game mechanics. So, Unfathomable, we'll see if that comes anywhere close to this. My guess is no, but and it's not any shorter, so we'll see. But that's my number 8, Battlestar Galactica. Number 7. So the next couple go back to the 80s. This one, I just have such fond memories. And you can still get it today. And I've bought this game multiple times and have not been able to get it to the table. Not because I couldn't find someone to play with. I've never even tried. It's because I couldn't get my mind back in the idea of playing this. And this is BattleTech. Now, this is the introductory box set that you can get today by Catalyst Games. At the time I played it, I think FASA was the publisher of it. This game is a whole lot of mechs on a map. Now, this particular image here is not an actual gameplay image. If it was, this would be like almost, a brawl in a phone booth type of thing. But the idea here is you're going to build mechs, and you're going to build mechs any way you want. Like basically you're spending points Depending on the tonnage of your mech, you're going to spend drives, you get power sources, you have lasers and ammo, and there's just so many things you can do to build these mechs. And then you're taking them out on the board and you're pitting them against your opponent. It's usually like a 2-on-2 or maybe a team. You can do free for all as well. There's a lot of different ways you can play this. It is a tacticals mini game on the map, but the modern versions just use hex counting too, so it kind of takes out those measurements. I think when I played it, we were actually using tape measures. I loved this game. I loved it so much. I still love it. I still look back and I still love this game. But I don't have the time to fiddle with numbers and inches and hexes, and we never painted our mechs, but even actually the time to paint the mechs are painting is fine. I'm not a high school kid anymore, and I can't invest the time into this. It's a lifestyle game. Now, if you're not a high school kid, I'm not trying to say that this is just for high school kids. I'm just saying this is a lifestyle game. This is one of those games that this is the game you play, and I'm not there anymore. So that's my number 7. My number 6 is related, same era, and same kind of game, but also a game that I love so much and so much want to get to the table again. I'm just never going to. It's never going to happen. And this is a role-playing game. So I like all kinds of games. Role-playing games, board games, competitive card games. I probably third is like where my attention is. Video games are really the only ones that I'm not really into anymore, even though I was for a very long time. I wrote and designed video games for a long time. Now my mobile games are usually board game ports or board game adjacent or card game adjacent. But anyway, number 6, role-playing game, Champions, the super role-playing game. And this here is 4th edition Champions. Since this book's come out, we've also seen 5th edition and 6th edition. And 6th edition is the current edition, and they're still making supplements for it. This game still exists. This game has character sheets that look like this. So on the left, you have the 4th edition character sheet. On the right, you have the 6th edition character sheet. It's spreadsheet the game as well. It's a lot like Battletech, but it's superheroes. And this game was, again, my high school role-playing game. I first got into Dungeons & Dragons, I first got interested in Dungeons & Dragons in middle school, and I played my first game of Dungeons & Dragons, and I walk into the dungeon, and I'm super excited, I'm a rogue, I'm going to open up a door and, do roguey things, and a guillotine comes down, I die, and I sit there and watch everyone else play for 4 hours. I decide I hate Dungeons & Dragons. But superheroes, the superheroes don't die. So when I got a hold of this book, I started making heroes and playing this over and over, and there was like tactical combat. Everything's broken down into seconds, and you're shooting energy beams, and you have invincibility and invisibility and flight and all the things that high school Chris was like super into. And I keep trying to get back into this game and just kind of reading through the rules and getting through the books. I can't memorize every power and every ability and everything the way I used to be able to. I used to be able to take, this is all a point by system, and I could take I could make a superhero in math class, because I memorized all the power points and like everything, what the cost of what's everything. Now I look at this and I'm just like, no. And there was an online massive role-playing game version of this, like World of Warcraft, but superheroes. It kind of sucked. And there hasn't been I would probably play like a tactical version of this if the computer did everything for me, but we haven't seen anything like that. And the IP, it's still there and it's still around, but it's, a one-man shop usually, maybe a couple freelancers or something. So this game's not dead. It's not a game that I'll ever be able to play again, because none of my friends would actually create heroes either. But I still love it. And so that's my number 4. All right, let's get back into some modern games. And this one, again, this is one that came out probably I started playing about the same time I played Catan and Lords of Waterdeep. And it's just recently come out with a 2nd edition. And I picked up the 2nd edition, and I open up the box, and I'm like, nope, there's so many more games that do more than this game does. Even though I really, really, really enjoyed this game when I had it, I will never play Dominion again. I'm just not going to do it. Not because it's bad. It's just, if I'm going to do a deck builder, there's 55 500 other deck builders that I can play, and they have better art and they have more, interactions and things you can do. Now, something to be said for Dominion. At its core, it's simple and easy, and it's good to play. And I think there's a new online version that actually looks good and is not trying to, charge you per card like the last online version was trying to do. But it's like, just look at all these cards. There's just two. I mean, this is only 3 expansions. This isn't even. There's like what, 9 or 10 expansions, and then the second edition is republishing a lot of these. It's just a lot. It's a lot, and if someone says, "Hey, Chris, you want to come down, sit down and play Dominion," and it's all set up, I would probably say, "Okay, fine. I'll play Dominion in that situation," but no other situation, and I'm never going to bring this up. So that's my number 4, Dominion. Actually, I have my number 5. My number 4 is, and this game makes me sad because I love this game so much. It's Arcadia Quest. This is a game where you're running around, and it's a competitive game where you are all kind of fighting against each other, but you're also fighting against the board, and you're trying to complete quests, and the first person to complete 3 quests or whatever the requirement is for that particular scenario wins that particular scenario. And then you go on, you can upgrade your heroes with different equipment that you might be able to buy, and there's like a 5-round campaign or 5-game campaign that you're going through, and it's just so much fun with the right group. It is a very, very competitive take that game, though, because you're trying to knock other people out. You're trying to push them around. Like, part of your quests are like knock out 2 of your different opponents, right? But in the right group, it can be a lot of fun. So there's 2 reasons why I will probably never play this game again, though. One, that right group, we're all kind of in different places and doing different things now. So I don't see that group coming back together. And even if the group did come back together, this game has been redone in Starcadia Quest, which streamlines a few things and puts it in space. And it's so close to this that I think I would feel like I was playing the same thing. But Arcadia Quest still is that fantasy cheapy theme. I love it. I love it so much. A lot more than the space one. But if I was going to play this game again, I'd probably pull out the space one because, try something new. Arcadia Quest, though, will always have a special place in my heart. I own every figure. I went out and tracked them all down. And, well, that's my number 4, Arcadia Quest. Okay, number 3. This is probably on a lot of people's lists of great games that they'll probably never play again. So I'm just going to jump right to it and say this is Pandemic Legacy, Season 1. I loved playing this. I hated, before I played Pandemic Legacy, hated Pandemic. I just don't think that's a very interesting and exciting and fun game. And when I played Pandemic Legacy, I saw the potential. I actually started to like Pandemic. I still don't like Vanilla Pandemic because I played Pandemic Legacy, so why would I go on and go back to play Vanilla Pandemic? But the experience here was fantastic. Now, this is a game that you could play again. Immediately, you could just turn around and play it again. The story, since it's a pretty linear story, you wouldn't be changing much there. But you could try to optimize your run through the season if you wanted to. And I've toyed around with the idea of, hey, maybe I'll play this again. It's been a few years now, and play it again and re-experience this. But I haven't played Pandemic Legacy Season 2 through conclusion. I have Pandemic Legacy Season 0 as well, and I haven't even opened that. So those games are going to come first. My wife doesn't like Pandemic, so she's not going to play this with me. So it's not going to happen. But it's still an amazing game, and everyone should play this game. That's and just so there's no spoilers, this is it. This is all you get for Pandemic Legacy is a empty card. What happens? I don't know. Pick it up, play it. You're going to love it. So that's my number 3, Pandemic Legacy. My number 2 is in the same vein. And this game I'll probably never play again, even though I own a new copy of it. And I'll probably never play any of its spin-offs either. And that is Gloomhaven. I played easily over 100 hours of this game. We almost finished the campaign. We're 5 scenarios short, and then again, gaming groups move away, and it's harder to get these things to the table and finish them. And it's been 3 or 4 years since we ended, so we're not going to pick up to play the last 5 scenarios. I have Jaws of the Lion. I opened it. I said, hey, this is a really cool way of getting into the game. It is the one I recommend. Anytime someone says they haven't played Gloomhaven, I say, go get Jaws of the Lion. It's shorter. It's contained. It'll teach you how to play as you go. I've backed Frosthaven. I cannot imagine a situation where I actually open Frosthaven and play it. I'm going to own it. I'm going to keep it. Maybe, who knows? But after 100+ hours of a board game, it's hard to get yourself psyched up for more of that same thing, even if it is a different story. Let's face it, Gloomhaven wasn't about the story. It's about the tactical combat and that card play and that character progression. That's the cool part of it. I'm done with those pieces of it. Maybe if Gloomhaven has something just, not Gloomhaven, but Frosthaven has something that's just crazy, unexpected, I might check it out. But even then, I couldn't commit to another 100+ hours of that. So number 2, Gloomhaven, a game I will probably never play again, but a great game nonetheless. Number 1, I've already talked about Gloomhaven and Pandemic Legacy, so what could be above that? This game is the reason why I fell in love with conventions so much. This was, again, probably 8-9 years ago, where I was introduced to this game at a convention, and then it became the game that I went to conventions for. I will never play this game again as a player. And that's Are You a Werewolf? In my case, it was the black and white Looney Lab version of Are You a Werewolf? But there's so many different variants of this. Ultimate Werewolf, Werewolves, Mafia. You play with playing cards. This is similar to the same reason that I think I'm done with Battlestar Galactica. But this deserves its own spot, because I would go to a convention and we would start playing at 8 o'clock at night, and we wouldn't be done until 4 o'clock in the morning. And we'd play multiple games, and there's 200-300 people in a room, all getting in groups of 15, and you start accusing each other of being werewolves, and then voting people off, and then as you got voted out of the village, you go and you start up a new village, and you just kind of go and go. And I made amazing friends. Like, this is where I made my friends, at conventions. And then years go by, and you get more and more comfortable with people, and sleep deprivation comes into play, and a lot of accusations come into play, and then hurt feelings start happening on a fairly regular basis. Like, how could you trust me? Do you have to trust me? And then they turn around and, they were not trustworthy. They were the werewolf, or you're just lying to your friends again. And I got to the point where I was so close with these people, I didn't want to be in that situation anymore, but they still did. So it created a rift of, like, I don't want to accuse you of lying to me all the time, and I don't want to be accused of lying to you all the time. And when those feelings kind of make their way out of the game, it becomes a problem. So I love the idea of social deduction games. I truly enjoyed playing them as I was, playing them and during that phase of my gaming life. And I'll still play a few social deduction games these days, but I prefer ones that are more mechanical based, where I can hide behind the mechanisms and kind of deduce who's what by seeing what people do on the board or with the cards or whatever, than just a completely social face-to-face accusation type of game. Yeah, I mean, we love this game so much that we started to do Bacon Con. So we didn't get enough of it at the convention. So I invited a bunch of people over to my house for a long weekend, and we played Are You a Werewolf the entire time we were there. So yeah, that's me with hair. And a friend of mine, quote unquote friend, who's the actual werewolf, accusing me of being a werewolf, and me trying to convince someone else that I'm not a werewolf. I didn't notice when she took this picture, but it's a good picture, so I like it. So those are my top 10 best games that I'll never play again. And just to sum it all up, we have Lords of Waterdeep and Catan, Monopoly, Battlestar Galactica, Battletech, Champions, the super role-playing game, Dominion, Arcadia Quest, Pandemic Legacy, Gloomhaven, and Are You a Werewolf? Next week, I'm going to do my top 10 two-player games. Then I'm going to do next week I'm going to do my top 10 gateway games or welcoming games. Then top 10 two-player games. And then finally top 10 games that I have not mentioned yet. And those will be my introduction top 10s to this series. So come back next Tuesday for Top 10 Tuesday with Tabletop Game Talk. And we'll talk to you then.